A Universal Truth, a strategic game of courtship set in the world or inspired by the works of Jane Austen. This is a game that plays from 1 to 5 players, as the box says. It does have a legit solitaire variant, meaning that you're going to play against an AI and your job is to get married. So, I played the game solitaire and I also played the game 2 players with my wife, who is a rabid Jane Austen fan, so I was able to convince her to play the game, although I fear that the game was going to be a little too complicated, a little bit on the heavy side. I think this is a gamer's game because of the number of unique effects, because of the many functions the cards can have. So, not a casual game that you will enjoy just because you like Jane Austen. You need to enjoy both Jane Austen, I believe, or courtship, and the fairly elaborated sets of unique effects. The protagonist of the game is this really massive deck of cards, each representing a different character with a lot of information going around, being presented around the portrait of the character, as you can see. One such card will be placed in front of you at the beginning of the game, and that represents you in the game. So suppose I am this guy here, and this is me, hello. And, or, you know what, that guy just looks funny. I like this guy. I like this guy better. And this one, there you go. I like this guy better. And that's me. Hello. I'm looking for somebody to marry. When you place, and at the beginning of the game, you receive a random character, and there will be you in the game. When you place the card in front of you, the number that you see here is the amount of money that you already have as income, if you're a guy, or dowry, if you're a gal. And then here on the side, you see the number of relationship. For example, this guy here has 1 male friend. This has 1 female friend. And there are people that are more sociable. They may have multiple relationships. For example, she already starts with a girlfriend and a guy friend. This is important. During the game, you will also play cards from your hand, and a card will represent the person that you want to marry. For the person you want to marry, you're looking at this section of the card here, and that represents what the person wants. For example, the person will marry somebody who has an income of 11,000, has at least 4 female friends, at least 6 male friends, and this section here represents the accomplishments. As you can see, cards have words written here on the left side. Of course, after you play the cards, getting all sorts of orientation. Etiquette, harp, poetry. When you, again, this is me, hello, this is me. When you play a card in your personal area, in your tableau with that orientation, then you only look at that word there, at that section, that represents the accomplishment that you're working on. If that is your first card in that accomplishment, I'm just starting with my filigree. I'm picking up some reading. I'm really good. I know the alphabet already. I'll be very accomplished in reading soon. Or etiquette. I can tell a fork from a spork. Later, if you play letter writing, I can write the letter A and B real good. See, I'm getting there. Later, if you have more than 1 in that accomplishment, you made a matching accomplishment, which will allow you to trigger special abilities. For example, if I have a match in reading, I'll be able to use the ability printed here. You have a player rate with those abilities. But also, matching allows me to fulfill the requirements of the people that I want to marry. Everybody has an idea of what they want in life. So, for example, this person, again, they want a certain amount of money, a certain amount of friends, and this lady here wants 2 yellow matches, each yellow match with 2 matching cards, so the matching reading will fulfill one of them. She wants 2 yellow matches with 2 cards each, and a red match, again, with 2 cards. So that section tells you this person wants 2 green matches each of 2 cards, this person doesn't want many different accomplishments, but wants you to be really good, wants to have a yellow accomplishment with 3 matching cards and another match of any color. You may notice, however, there's also a heart here. So that's also something that they want. To marry a person, you need that amount of money, you need those friends, you need those accomplishments, and you need to have performed a certain amount of acts of courtships, which means you will need to play cards under the person that you want to marry, so that only the heart is showing until you meet that total. So, for example, if in my tableau, if I had this card as my love interest, I play the card as my love interest, and in my tableau I have at least 3,000. Well, I already start with 4,000, but again, to make more money, you play cards stacking them under there. Now I'm making 8,000. So if in your tableau you have enough cards to have enough money, to have enough friends, enough money, enough friends, enough accomplishments, and enough acts of courtships, then you win the game. So basically your tableau, in order to fulfill the requirements of the person you're trying to marry, you will have some cards here added to your personal card to indicate your friendships and the money, some cards here representing the accomplishments, some cards under the love interest, him or herself, representing the hearts. First player to put together a tableau that meets all the requirements of their interest, of their love interest, wins the game. Sounds complicated? Don't worry, I haven't even started telling you how to play the game. I just gave you the general idea. So you start with a card representing yourself right in front of you. Then you shuffle again the monster deck and you draw 10 cards and you place them in a sort of a rondel, leaving a little bit of space. Each player has a pawn, such as this one. Say we're playing with 2 players here. And you place the 2 pawns in the space, in the gap that you left in the rondel. Now you have to think of each pawn occupying a notional slot. So with 2 players, the rondel has 12 positions, 12 slots. If that was the case, that would be 13. There's still 13, but at least you can see a bit better. 14, and so on and so forth. The number of slots always stays the same, and I mention it because the rulebook has some gray areas here and there, and that was one that tricked me at the beginning. I thought that if there are game effects that remove cards without replenishing, then the rondel would become smaller, but that was not the case. 12 with 2 players, 13 with 3 players, and so on and so forth. We also have dice, because what's a card game without dice, right? And we roll dice and at the beginning of the game, and we place them in the pool in the middle of the table. We also start with 3 cards in hand, and we're ready to go. You don't start with a lot of interest in play yet, and that's important because sometimes you're looking around, you start, creating your accomplishment. I'm really good in botany. Why am I interested in botany? Haha. Boom, because at some point I'll play a card with a green accomplishment, somebody who likes botany and other green accomplishments. Sometimes you want to keep a card in hand as your potential love interest, but you don't declare it yet because then the people may start blocking you, may start taking the accomplishment that now they know you really need. So, you start with yourself and a hand of cards. When it is your turn, you can take one and exactly one action. You must take one and exactly one action. A possible action is to take the standard die action, which means you select a die from the pool, you remove it from the pool, and you move your pawn clockwise on the rondel by the number of the die that you selected. If there are no dice in the pool, you cannot take that action. So right now I move by 3. I draw a card from the deck and I place it in the space where I was. and then I take the card of the space where it landed and I add it to my hand. And when I move around taking the standard, the basic die action, I skip locations with other players. So if I am gonna do this, it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4. I place a card there, which is where it was, and I take the card there. And then somebody wants to do 6, and so on and so forth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Landing there, taking that card, replenishing the card in the slot where it just was. That's for the standard action. If there are no dice there and you want to take that action, you need to play a card from hand looking at the icon at the bottom and a card with the exclamation mark. By playing a card with exclamation mark, playing means you discard it, you replenish the pool, you roll the dice, and you immediately take a standard die action. That's how that works. If you cannot do anything and there are no dice here, you can also replenish your pool, the pool of dice, and take a standard die action by discarding your entire hand of cards, which can be annoying unless your hand is empty, in which case you're allowed to discard a metaphysical hand and you still get to do that action. Weird, huh? Yeah, you can discard the notional hand if that is the case. Now, that's for one of the possible things that you can do, which is take the standard die action. Or you can play a card from hand to use one of the effects here at the bottom. If you discard a card with the star, which means an accomplishment, it allows you, the action is by playing a card with an accomplishment symbol, it allows you to play a different card with an accomplishment as an accomplishment in your tableau. So it takes 2 to get a single accomplishment. By playing this card, by discarding that card, then I can play this other one in my tableau, or vice versa. I discard this one to add this one to my tableau. Or I can discard a card for its money symbol, which allows me to discard. If I discard a card with the money symbol, it allows me to add another card to my tableau as money. The one I add as money needs to be of equal value or lower than the one I'm discarding. I cannot discard a 2,000 to add an 8,000. I could discard an 8,000 to add a 2,000, for example. And again, that's how you improve your income. I could discard a card with the heart to play another card with the heart, and as an act of love, adding it again to that section of my loved card. But there are restrictions there. I'm not going to get into the detail there. Trust me, there are restrictions. You can play a card with the comic book balloons, which represents you're trying to increase your circle of friends, and here there's a bit of a push your luck. You discard a card for that action and you start drawing cards. You can draw 1, 2, or 3 cards. If you draw cards with a red silhouette, that's it. That's it, you're done, nothing. Suppose I did not draw one like that. Suppose, I draw this one. Remember, you can do 1, 2, or 3. I can stop and be happy with my attempt at improving my social standing, my circle of friends. And if I decide to stop, then I simply add that to my tableau. Or if I decide to go, then I draw another card. And if it's a silhouette, I lose them. So I can do 1, 2, or 3 cards, stop whenever I want. 1, 2, or 3, as long as I don't draw one of these. If I draw one of these, then my social action, my attempt at being sociable fails miserably. So as you can see, I don't know if you're even... so as you can see, there's a lot going on here. Because if I don't take a standard action, I could play a card for one of the icons at the bottom. Remember, it can be accomplishment, money, attempt at socializing, replenish the pool, or act of love. What else can you do? As your action for the turn, if you have a complete accomplishment which means at least 2 of the same accomplishment matching, say poetry. Then as your action for the turn, you can take that action. So instead of doing one of the things I mentioned, I could take the poetry action, but no, poetry is one of those actually is ongoing. But there are other accomplishments that are not ongoing, and so you can take them as your action for the turn. Say if I have 2 letter writing cards, I can use that accomplishment, and as my action for the turn, I can say I'm going to use my letter writing accomplishment, and I simply do what it says there. If I have literature, if I have needlework, painting, same idea. But wait, there's more. What else can you do? As your action for the turn, you could use a special event, which simply is the effect indicated by the words written here on top of the portrait. I can take the learn action, the act quickly, the hedge maze, the more hedge maze, there's a lot of kind deed, and so on and so forth. Reconsider. What are these? Worry not. Your friendly player aid is here to tell you what that is. To summarize, when it is your turn, you must take one of those 4 actions, or one of 4 kinds of actions, I should say. Stand the die action, which will give you a card, or play a card for its icon, and many of those mean that you discard a card to actually play a card to your tableau, or trigger an accomplishment action, or use the event printed on one of the cards in your hand. Of course, you play it to trigger that action. That's how you play Universal Truth. Continue like this, taking actions turn after turn until a player has completed all the requirements in their tableau to marry the person that they want to marry. And at that point, good for them. They get married, and the person that accomplished that wins the game. A Universal Truth. I really wanted to like this game. I wanted to like it a lot. I thought there was a lot of potential. But I have very mixed feelings about it. Definitely it is a game that is going to have a narrow audience, because just loving the topic is not going to be enough. You need to have a taste for really complicated, not for complicated games, too much, but for games with complicated ramifications and complicated sets of effects. Now, there's a good thing. You don't have to know all of the accomplishment effects at the very beginning, because maybe, a certain accomplishment will never be in play, will never be considered by anybody. You just, as they emerge, you learn them little by little. Okay, this is tennis, this is chess, this is archery, etc., etc., etc. But then you see that some of those accomplishments are really powerful. Tennis, I'll let you figure out what it is. I'm sure you can find it online. If somebody gets it early on, they're going to be a pain in the neck. It's going to be very hard to stop them from stealing cards that they know that you want. And the balancing mechanism is some of these seem to be better, but they're a lot rarer. Yeah, sure, but if they happen, you have them and I don't, and so that's going to still be a problem. I'm still going to be one of those common, very frequent, common, average effects, and you're going to be with rare, awesome effect, and then it's going to be a problem for me. But just the learning curve of how to play proficiently with all of the events, that takes a while. And again, the game teaches itself. You just with something basic, okay, I'm going to socialize, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And you learn it as you go, but still there is a lot to digest. Again, as somebody who plays games a lot, I find the game somewhat challenging to learn, but not too much. I play with another friend who is a hardcore gamer, and he also struggled at the beginning, but by the end he was able to figure it out and to win. But he also says, well, this is a pretty heavy game. Played it with my wife, great Jane Austen fan, not a heavy gamer. She did not enjoy this game at all. So, pretty heavy game. But is it worth the squeeze? And that's kind of the problem. There is a major luck element here. And for a game that has so many moving parts, I really want a game where luck is minimal. And to say, but there are cards involved, there are dice. I know. And that's why maybe I like the other elements to be a little more streamlined. with a game that's with so many moving parts, so many rules, so many effects, I want to be in control much more. I don't want to have a great cunning plan with all of my little parts, moving parts in order, and then I keep getting unlucky results. And the socialized action that push your luck. There have been games in which I took the action exactly once. I drew 3 cards and I got all of the connections that they needed. And it wasn't even a card that had few. It was a card that was pretty demanding, but I got them all in one case. There have been another game where I must have taken the actions 12 times and I never ever ever was able to get anything out of it. Huge drain on my actions, nothing you could do about it. Well, there's an action in which you can use cards as something else, then you transfer them to connections, but you need to be able to find the cards that allow you to do that, and you're spending a lot of action. Somebody took the socialized action exactly once and they're there. Huge luck element there, and again, to me, just clashes with a game that is supposed to give you so much agency to such a large menu of actions. It just doesn't. The two things don't go together very well to me. And another problem is that the game just takes a while. It's not just long and epic. It feels like it drags. The fact that you need to play 2 cards basically to get one effect, and so to get an accomplishment, I need 2 accomplishment cards. And maybe in the rondel there aren't so many, so I need to wait for the time where I get one of those, and I need to hope that you don't mess up my hand with one of your effects. And finally I get to play one accomplishment which does exactly nothing yet. I need to redo the whole thing to be able to find the matching accomplishment. Then I get the option of doing an extra action. The act of courtships at the end, when you place those hearts, your love interest wants 5, that means 10 of those cards. And I play the game only solitaire, and I think the game works pretty well. That's probably my favorite version. Or with 2 players. And with 2 players, the game already drags quite a bit. I can't begin to imagine playing with 3 or 4 players. I don't think I would ever want to play that, because then there's absolutely no planning that matters, because people keep messing up the rondel. Planning between turns makes no sense. Even more randomness, and just I think the pace is going to be very, very, very tedious. So, it's a game that seems to have potential, but also seems to be so involved. And ultimately, when you have these involved mechanisms that are paired with a considerable amount of luck, to me, just doesn't work very well. Again, I found it quite enjoyable as a solitaire, strictly and only. Now, the game has written another thing that is interesting and peculiar to me. The game as is, it just feels too long. You can shorten it, you're told in the rule book, by playing a variant in which you just play the cards for their effects. So if I have a card with the star, which is an accomplishment, I just play it as an accomplishment. I don't need one to trigger another. If I have to play money, I don't need a money to play a money. I just play the money. And now you have the paradox that this time the game feels too rushed. And this time it feels like there's too much luck again. But this time because I may just get almost everything that I need early on. But the very fact that the rule book tells you either or, this is not a small variant. These are 2 ways of playing the game that are radically different. And usually in a game that has been, well polished, well thought out, well developed, the variants are not so dramatic. You're not told, yeah, play this way or this other way. It's not like when you play Catan, like, yeah, you play to 10 points, but you can play to 25 instead. Why not? Because the game has been usually tweaked in one way or another. So there's just something a little bit blurry, a little bit unfocused, a little bit undercooked or underdefined or unpolished in the general idea and design of the game. So unfortunately, this is my assessment. It's a game that works okay as a solitaire game if you're willing to put in the work of learning all of these actions and effects. It's just not very engaging, and it's either too slow or too fast, if you play it against other players, and I would never not ever play it with more than 2 players. This is my very mixed assessment of Universal Truth, because that's how I felt after playing the game a couple of times, and all I can do in my videos is to share exactly my opinions, which I just did.